Hey everybody, Chris Matan here, Real Estate Machine Show. So we're going to continue on the series and talk a little math and how, I use math in the machine shop and math in the real estate world and how those two can kind of intertwine. And rate is, a popular term, right? You've got interest rates, you've got cap rates, you've got burden rates, in the shop. You got all these different kind of rates. So I want to talk through two rates that I use on a daily basis. In my machining business, there's something called the burden rate, and I'm not going to go into the weeds on it, but it basically, you got burden rate and you got shop rate, and these are the two rates that I use to try and quote work and quote jobs, and I need to allocate a rate to the amount of time that I think that it's going to take to make a certain part or parts, right? So when you use the burden rate is kind of related to the overhead of the operation. For example, office salaries, utilities, insurance, rent, those type of fixed costs inside of the business. That's how you calculate the burden rate. You take all those costs and you divide it by the total hours that are worked inside of the shop. And then you've got the shop rate, which you're going to factor in what your average wage is in the shop on the machinist. Put those two together and you're going to come up with an hourly rate that you're going to calculate against the time it takes to what you think. I mean, listen, it's a guesstimate game when it comes to quoting work, but you need to come up with a labor number and an hourly rate. So those are the figures that I kind of put together in my little goulash to come up with a shop rate to charge and ultimately come up with a price that I give to customers and hopefully win the job. In addition to that rate, that's probably the most important piece of the puzzle, but you're also dealing with the cost of material and the cost of outside operations that you're going to be paying to vendors and those type of things. So you put all that stuff together and that's going to come up with the price that you're going to quote. Maybe you're going to build in some profit there. Maybe that's already built into your burden rate. There's a million ways to skin a cat, but burden rate and shop rate is something that I use on a daily basis. Now, as far as the real estate business goes, I'm in the commercial space and a lot of stuff is valued on cap rate, capitalization rate. And, for those of you who don't know, I'm going to assume that a lot of you do know, especially in my, you guys from the real estate side of my audience are going to know and understand what a cap rate is. But some other machinists out there that are watching it may not have any idea. So a cap rate basically takes your net income, you allocate either a rate of return to come up with the value, if you want to call it, or an offering price or an asking price, or you take your asking price, your offering price, or your purchase price, most importantly, divide it by the net income, and that's going to come up with the cap rate. So, and the cap rate, I want to be really clear, is a snapshot. It's not gospel. It's, we all have to agree on what the income and expenses are to come up with an accurate number. But the gist of it is that if you have an 8 cap, you're basically saying that you've got an 8% return on this investment your first year. Now, what's important to note about this is that debt is not included. This is not included any kind of mortgage payment, any kind of interest payment. This is assuming a cash buy or all cash for for the property. So to keep it really simple, if you got $100,000 net income, we agree on that income, and you allocate a 10 cap to it, it's $1 million building. And, so cap rates are really popular. A lot of times I get clients asking me, well, what's the cap rate? What's the cap rate? And I'm almost reluctant to, go all in on what a cap rate value is for a certain property, because first of all, if there's no income there, you can't use that as a true value unless it's all projected. Then you'd have to go maybe price per square foot. But if you really do have validated and backed up income and expense information, I can give you the range of a cap rate, 7%, 8%. And then depending on the risk of the investment is going to determine where that cap rate sometimes falls into. Not all buildings and cap rates are created equal. So burden rate, shop rate, cap rate, all kinds of rates, interest rates, who cares, right? I think everybody should pay cash for property. I'm just joking. Leverage, leverage, leverage. I hope that was helpful. I'll talk to you guys real soon. Have a great day.